You're listening to the Golf Unfiltered podcast, your source for in-depth interviews with the biggest names, brands, and personalities in golf. Our mission? To keep you informed and help you enjoy the game even more. And now, the owner and host of the Golf Unfiltered podcast, Adam Fonseca.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Golf Unfiltered podcast, episode 208. I am your host, as always, Adam from golfunfiltered.com. You can find us all over social media at Golf Unfiltered. You can also send us an email, golfunfiltered@gmail.com. Hello to our friends over at thehackersparadise.com if you're listening to this on the THP mobile app. Hello to our friends over at Cleveland and Srixon Golf. Be sure to check out all their great equipment. You guys know I'm playing them throughout 2019. I say that every episode, and I mean it, because they are fantastic pieces of equipment. And hello to our friends over, of course, at budgetgolf.com. They've got some great sales going on right now. They just had a huge sale for Father's Day and for new graduates, and I'm sure you could probably still find a couple of those items at budgetgolf.com with those prices. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you like what we do here on the podcast. Go on to iTunes. You can go on to Spotify. I think there's a review portion. I don't know. But be sure to leave your comments because we do take that feedback very seriously. Speaking of feedback, I want to thank to anyone who responded to the quick little listener survey that we did not too long ago. I forgot to follow up on that in the last episode, but got some good feedback on that, and so I appreciate that. Definitely maybe do that in the future again, because I think we learned a lot from that. So thanks again to all of you who responded. Today we bring back another repeat guest, Mr. Sam Wiprapasorn. He is one of the co-founders and the owner and the man in charge over at Cut Golf. They have just come out with a new dual-core golf ball. It's called the Cut Blue DC. It is really, really good. I've had the chance to play a couple rounds with the DC golf ball. It behaves very similar to higher-priced premium brands, similar spin, similar distance. In some instances, I would say that it even performs better distance-wise than a couple other balls that I've played in the past. And Sam and I go a little bit deeper into not only the scale and the growth of Cut Golf so far, because they have grown. If you follow them on social media at Cut Golf, you can see what I'm talking about. They've got a great social media presence. We talk a little bit about that presence as well in today's episode. Specifically, they use a lot of social media influencers, and I know we've been talking a lot about that on our website as well as past episodes, just about the effectiveness of social media influencers. And, Sam has a good clarifying point that he makes in our conversation today about how he prefers to think about that type of marketing and how does that balance against performance. Because as we all know, there was a very high profile golf ball test that went on earlier in the year. And there's been a lot of chatter on social, and I've spoken to a few folks in the industry who were both positively and negatively reviewed in that test and other tests as well. Cut Golf actually did not perform, per the test, very well in comparison to the others that it was put up against. And I find that to be pretty unfair. And certainly Sam does too, of course. But, it's a little unfair because, first of all, you really can't declare a winner in one of these reviews, and I don't necessarily see the point in that. But also because it really does impact a brand negatively, especially if there's not a lot of context on the actual test itself. This is real stuff that people are dealing with, and certainly one side of that argument can say, well, just make a better product. Well, what does that even mean? What's a good product to me probably isn't going to be the same to you. And if we're going solely off of data, and Sam actually talks a little bit about their testing protocol that they use at Cut Golf, and I appreciate his transparency with that as well. And I think other golf companies should do that. Many do. But I think if transparency is something that we want to get to and really grow the game and educate one another, continue to do that, folks. We could all benefit from that. But if you're only going off of how golf balls perform in one test and not necessarily on course and whether or not your score is being impacted, then I don't think you're getting the full picture. So at any rate, Sam and I have a great conversation about all of that and more in about 25 minutes today. So much appreciated for you stopping by and listening to this episode with Sam Wiprapasorn from Cut Golf. We'll be right back after a quick word from our friends over at 4Golfers Network.
Hi, this is Bill Hobson from the Four Golfers Network podcast. And as you and I enjoy this episode of Golf Unfiltered with my friend Adam, I'm reminded of an indisputable reality. We, as golfers, are nuts. We chase a small ball around the planet, spending thousands of dollars in the effort to get that ball into a tiny hole. We then yell at the ball and curse it when it doesn't listen, even though it can't listen. It's a ball. This insanity is all part of the magic of the game, and it's what we celebrate on the Four Golfers Network podcast every Monday when a fresh episode comes your way on Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeart, all the places. So after you finish listening to Adam today, I'd love to have you check out the Four Golfers Network podcast, that's F-O-R-E, where we celebrate the game with top-name guests and an exploration of the things about golf that both drive us crazy and bring us back for more.
I stink! The ball is just sitting there and I can't hit it.
No questions. Can we give you a hard time about getting out to the Cut Invitational this year?
You could do whatever you want. Whatever you need to do.
We'll do that at the end of it.
Okay, sounds good.
And by the way, you got to bring the missus out. Screw you. We want to hang out with her.
She is something.
Yeah. Yeah. When she was going through picking out the clothing, I was absolutely. I don't know if I saw it on Twitter or on your story. I can't remember what it was on, but it was just I was dying laughing.
Yeah.
It was.
She got pretty frustrated that day. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's been a few people who have said you got to get her more content, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we will. Who knows?
No, absolutely. It was great. No, it's always good to, it's, you know what, that type of stuff is what humanizes you, and it's what gets a guy like me to just kind of pause. I think that's always something that I would say Golf Unfiltered and Cut Golf have in common is just the human. I really enjoy your content. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate that, man, and I enjoy yours as well. And maybe we'll just get right into it, listeners. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm talking to Sam Prapasorn. He's one of the co-founders of Cut Golf. He's been on the show a couple times before. It's been a while since you and I last spoke, Sam. How are things hanging over there?
Things are very well these days. Can't complain. And I don't know if the listeners caught it or not. I'm talking to you from the inside of a vehicle parked inside of our own office that we're now disguising as a phone booth.
Nice.
Because the cool, hip, open office environment sometimes isn't conducive to focused and private conversations, and we've got people on other calls, and then we just introduced the Nerf guns into the building.
I saw that on your story the other day. You guys seem to have a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, I mean, no one is safe. You expect to be ambushed leaving the restroom, so that's why I go in there wearing a range bucket as a helmet sometimes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys also have a Golden Tee machine, right? And I'm talking like old school Golden Tee, not one of the newer ones.
Yes, we do. We have. I mean, this thing must. Let's see. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, that monitor isn't more than 11 inches in diagonal.
Nice.
So maybe the good folks over at Golden Tee might think that we're worthy of an upgrade sometime soon.
Hey, if you guys are listening, help Sam out. I mean, he's in a car, for crying out loud, inside, just so he can talk to us. Help him out with a Golden Tee machine. So, Sam, I'm glad that you're able to come back on. I'd like to keep in touch with you guys, and obviously, we're a fan of yours, and you just recently came out with an exciting new product. It's the first dual core ball from Cut Golf, and it's the Cut Blue DC. You were kind enough to send over a few samples for me to try them. I had the chance to play a few rounds with them already, and once again, you've come out with a great product and an incredible price point. What made you guys want to go down the dual core path? Because that's a pretty specific golf ball construction that I know a lot of listeners already have in their bags.
Right. Well, I think the reason why we wanted to do it was, once again, push the envelope from a value standpoint. From a performance standpoint, of course, you want to constantly be evolving and improving the product offering that we're putting out there to our customers. But, I mean, there's no possibility to take a dual core product to the market at the $19.95 price point.
Sure.
You still feel that at $29.95, you're still at, I mean, I think the number off the top of my head is about 35% in savings versus the major brands' dual core offerings.
Yeah, and at $29.95, I mean, that's something that's going to put you in a very competitive space. But for a golf ball of this quality and construction, you're not going to find another ball that I can think of off the top of my head that's even anywhere near that same technology standpoint. So I think you guys have definitely hit a pretty important niche.
I would say we have, and you know what? So far, the early reviews coming back in from customers have been absolutely fantastic. And what I'm most proud about is the amount of time that we took in developing this product. The folks who helped us develop the product, not only our internal staff here and, you know, with Travis Russell's our main product manager on the golf ball side of things, but also, you know, some folks that we have met along our journey who have now hopped on board and said, you know what, we're going to help you design and improve your golf ball moving forward.
And to talk a little bit about the construction of the golf ball, it's a 360 dimple pattern. It's, you know, got 105 compression. It's available in optic yellow, which I think is a smart move on your part. A lot of people like that optic yellow. You know, there's a lot of different colors these days, and I know you guys offer other options in the color space as well. But, you know, it's funny how when we, you know, as a fellow golf equipment junkie, it's interesting to see how customer preferences evolve over time, and yellow just being this thing that everybody wants.
Right, and the optic yellow will be out later this summer. So currently what we have in stock is the dual core and the white cover. And by the August time frame, you should see the yellow coming online.
And so it's also got a softer compression core, and that's really going to boost the long game, you know, and it definitely helps with spin. And so in my test on course with the DC, I noticed that it is very similar to my current gamer, which is great, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. But, you know, I just love the fact that you can really control this ball around the greens. And when you were testing and you were developing, you know, or getting ready to bring this product to market, what were some of the qualities that you would hope that fans of Cut Golf would pick up on? Was it spin? Was it the distance?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what we saw in the initial testing and something that told us this is something that we have to bring to the market was you're going to see an increase in the ball speed, right? Also, you're going to see increased control from, let's call it, you know, guys that are coming in from 125 yards and going into the green. You're going to see increased control with those shots. And you will also see an increase in greenside control. So it's meeting all the characteristics that we were looking to improve our product line with. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with cut blue or cut gray, but this was just us taking that step to the next level as well.
So would you say then, in reference to your product line, that the DC is for a specific player type? And if so, what player type were you trying to hit for this?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's definitely for the lower handicap, more elite player. And that's initially who we tested this ball with. Folks who maybe on cut blue, they're like, okay, yeah, this is good. And then when we went to them with cut, blue DC, they said, okay, now we're talking. I'm actually willing to game this ball. But before with maybe the blue, it was like, maybe I'll squeeze in the practice round with it. Now we're having people come back and say, you know what, this is now going to replace my gamer in the bag.
Yeah, and I would say that those highly skilled players or players that are lower handicapped, they don't necessarily want too much difference in the performance of their equipment. They want to be able to really understand and predict what their equipment's going to do, especially the golf ball. And so I am a single digit, and I've noticed that, hey, you know what? I know what that ball's going to do when I hit it, as opposed to perhaps, balls that spin a little bit more, not knowing if it's going to stay on the green or not. And so during your testing, I'd imagine that some of the players that you spoke with experienced something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a guy knock an ace in.
Oh, nice.
So I mean that should have told us something. But like I said, I mean, we like to, not only do we like to test on a TrackMan and see what numbers are coming back in. To me, the numbers are great, and what we see in our testing just in-house is that for the most part, all golf balls are comparable in performance. You're not going to see this dramatic loss in distance, or the spin numbers stay pretty consistent and usually in the same ballpark, I should say. So what we try to do is make sure that we have a sample size of folks that are testing the product on the golf course, and they're giving us feedback in real time. I might be there for some testing sessions. I may not be there for other testing sessions, just based on, the location. And when I'm there, I'm just kind of like a silent, bystander, if you will.
Sure.
I don't tell people what's in the ball or how the ball's built. I'm just saying, let's get you on the course. Let's see how, and give it to me straight. Don't tell me it's great because I'm sitting here. And at the end of the day, when these folks come back and say, yep, you have something here, this is a great ball, here's my feedback, that's really what means a lot to us and gives us the confidence to take a product to market.
And so just to clarify, too, for the listeners, when you say that, the golf ball performs within the same ballpark, you're suggesting that, a dual core ball like the DC from Cut Golf performs similar to others in that category. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Because I think definitely people would say that there are golf balls that perform differently from one another.
Correct. I mean, let me be clear. You have to be apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Don't go comparing like Cut Red to a multi-layer urethane ball. We're not even in the right zip code at that point.
Sure, no, and that makes complete sense too. And that's an important thing for people, consumers to understand, where if they're going to go and they're going to test two products, and we talk about this all the time on this show, you want to make sure, like you say, to compare apples to apples, because otherwise, of course, you're going to see a difference because you're not even in the same zip code, to use your terminology. So that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to talk a little bit about your actual the testing that you do. And so would you say that you do most of your product testing on course?
I would say we do most of our product testing, in a simulator bay.
Okay.
And quite honestly, I have no problem disclosing, our testing methodology.
Sure.
The reason why we do the bulk of it in the testing bay and not outdoors at the moment is it's just budgetary.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it is not. And I'm more than happy to entertain, the robot, or the Iron Byron as most of us like to call it, testing outdoors. I'm a little bit of a numbers geek, and I know when we have the opportunity to do something, I will definitely be on site for that test, no matter where it's at. But for the time being, the majority of our testing does take place, on a TrackMan indoors. And when we test, we're testing our product versus other, competitors' product. And what we're trying to do is just establish a baseline for what our product does in comparison to the major brands, not so that we can show that we outperform them, but we want to show that we're comparable to them.
And I think that's an important distinction because, obviously a pretty well-known golf ball test has come out recently. And, I think the people that have an issue with tests like that, they declare a winner. And you've been on the show a couple times, Sam, and you and I have talked about this offline too, where it's, Cut is not the brand that's going to say we're going to outperform every other brand out there. That's never been your goal. Instead, as you just put it, it's more to show that you can equip your game to comparable technology at a lower price point. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely correct, Adam. We're very clear. We're very disciplined in this approach. I think there's, off the top of my head, I could count about 4 or 5 major brands that do that. They play that game very well. They're equipped to play that game very well. They got guys on tour weekend in, weekend out playing the product. They have massive marketing budgets where they're really able to hammer these messages out to the everyday consumer of the golf ball. And you know what? Good for them. We're going to stay in our lane, and we're just going to continue to offer our customers and new customers just a quality golf ball at an absurd value.
And what that kind of transitions into a little bit, Sam, is just the marketing of a product. And Cut Golf has definitely got, you talk about the lane that you stay in. And Cut Golf does a great job of having a strong social media presence. You have a lot of, influencers on social media that are playing your product, that, people can see all the great events that you're doing. And when you try to mirror that with the actual performance of the golf ball, what is your take on that balance? Is it a hard thing to do? Is that something that you keep in mind, performance versus the appearance that everyone's playing it? How does that all work?
It is a fine balance. I think as our brand continues to evolve and mature, we find different ways to use our social media presence. And what I refer to is more of like our friends on social media, who essentially were the cornerstone as to how we really got our brand out into the marketplace.
Right.
And they won't be forgotten. We appreciate everything that they've helped us, achieve along the way. But yeah, you got to really take a step back also and say, all right, I think it's time to really start positioning the brand in a different light, and using some of these folks to get a different message out there. And I think as we move forward, that message will be, hey, look at what this ball's doing on the course. We have access to a great social media personality by the name of Brian Wilbur, or B Dubsky as he's known on Instagram. And Brian has been a great advocate for our brand. And he's been very generous with his time and use of resources, where he's gone out and said, here, I'm going to set up a TrackMan on the course and let's go see what we find. And he's feeding us this information. We use some of it to put out on social. We use other information to keep here internally. But I think as we move throughout the rest of this year and into 2020, you're going to see a little transition into how we use these folks.
And I think that's really smart because, and I like the way that you put it there, Sam, too, because I think we would both agree that in the beginning, Cut Golf seemed to have a very youthful feel about it, to kind of hit that specific demographic. But then with the introduction of other people playing the ball and kind of noticing that shift to performance-based content, it's nice to hear that was a conscious effort to kind of make that shift. And so would you say that as your company matures, so too does the content that you put out on it?
Yeah, absolutely. We won't lose sight of who we are, where we came from, and where we've been. But I think, there's moments where you're just going to see this evolution of the messaging. It doesn't mean that we're going to 180 degree, abandon ship on the current set of messaging.
Right.
And then, you would see this, buttoned up version of Cut.
Right.
That's not going to happen either. But it'll be a slight change that we're in for.
Then that's smart too. I mean, obviously you have to kind of stick with what got you to where you are, to a certain degree. But I think it shows a lot of maturity for a brand such as yours that's in such a very saturated market. I mean, when you think of golf balls, you think of so many different brand names, and it's nice to say, hey, you know what? In order for us to get in that conversation, we have to put out a product like the DC that not only compares to the ones that are being talked about all the time, but, oh, by the way, you can actually have fun playing it too.
Right. And that's the whole basis for our brand is it has to be fun. I mean, if you entered the golf space not to have fun, then why even do it?
Right.
I mean, I think some of the most memorable moments that I've had in my role here to date have just been those they've been more on the course, obviously. I mean, there's just I've had a chance to play some golf with some amazing people along the way, and that's what reminds me of why we do this, and the reason for our brand, and that's what keeps us going here.
And so you've got the growth of the company that is great to see. You've got you've got the Nerf guns, you've got the products that are going out, you've got all this great stuff, you've got the great content. And maybe talk to me a little bit just about overall scale right now. I mean, you've got a great product line. You've got something for a little bit different for everybody. Where do you see this going ultimately? Do you see yourself now? You're in online stores as well, correct? And you're in brick and mortar pro shops also.
Correct. Yes. I mean, currently on golfballs.com, Budget Golf. Rock Bottom is our lead e-tailers. Mm-hmm. The growth of our Amazon business has just been off the charts.
Good.
The success that we've had at retail with Worldwide Golf Shops. So most folks would know that it's Vans or Roger Dunn, mm-hmm. Or Edwin Watts, to name a few. Our efforts there are also have been very successful. For the first half of 2019. Now we're having the growing pains that a company in our spot has, which is I'm going to step out of this little makeshift phone booth here, and someone's going to tell me, because I can see it right now, that we're now sold out of Cut Blue.
Oh wow!
And selling out of product has been something that we've been experiencing since I want to say about March through now, and. Yeah, I mean, I have to get on a plane, go see factories, and do the rounds to make sure that this doesn't happen. But mm-hmm. It's also an impossible science to really gauge, demand. I mean, to me, I don't care how much analytics you have in the building, no one's to say or be able to predict, how quickly your demand is going to grow for a company of our stature. All it takes is some extraordinary circumstance to happen, and our inventory can shift at the snap of a finger, and that's with us being well stocked on the majority of our product lines.
And so, if I understand correctly, you're seeing the majority of your consumers coming in from online. Is that correct?
Yeah, still currently the bulk of our consumers are buying online, and then we still get folks saying, "Hey, I'm glad to see you guys are in my local retailer. You guys put out a great product. When I'm in a pinch, I'm going to get it here."
Nice.
And we want to see, we're also making that transition to making sure that we're a good partner for retailers. Not only just the folks at Worldwide, but there's some discussions that are very interesting to be had for expanding our retail business as we head into 2020 as well.
That's really encouraging to hear from, and I'm sure listeners listening to this, because I know that there's a lot that are in the equipment space, and I'm sure it's encouraging to them to hear that a company like yours that started in the garage. I remember you telling me that you would just fulfill orders in your garage. I'd imagine that you're not in the garage anymore, are you, or are you still?
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, you moved out.
Yeah, I don't think that my wife would appreciate the Nerf gun battles going on in the garage or around the house. So we're now out of the garage. That move happened mid-April. We've settled into a really nice space here in good old Costa Mesa, California. And, you know, we have a solid crew of guys that work at Cut Golf day in, day out. And we have a whole lot of fun and a whole lot of golf balls along the way.
That's awesome, man. It's always good to talk to you, too, and just to learn a little bit more about, you know, what's going on over at Cut. You know, and again, listeners, you want to go ahead and check them out all over social media. You can follow them at Cut Golf, and the hashtag is hashtag Cut Golf DC to learn a little bit more about the Cut Blue DC. And you can, of course, go to cutgolf.co is their main website to go and take a look at all the great products they got going on. Sam, you know, I know that you and I, you know, we don't have the chance to talk too often, but when we do, I always learn something new from you. And is there anything else that maybe you could tease for our listeners to kind of pay attention to Cut Golf for?
Well, we currently have a more robust apparel line offering that will be coming out in 2020. So really excited about that.
Great.
And then we can't let you off the hook too easily.
I knew this was coming.
the third annual Cut Golf Invitational is scheduled for October 17th and 18th.
Okay.
And we expect to see you out here. I'm just gonna send a guy over from American Airlines to just pick you up.
Hey, you know, that would be pretty cool if you could make that happen, actually.
The airlines have lost all sense of service these days. I think a few years back, or many years back, I should say, that would have actually happened. But
right.
But we got to figure out a way to get you out here to sunny Orange County. So you can partake. We'd like to finally see you out at one.
Yeah, man. It's this darn day job just kind of, dampers things. But I'll tell you what, I will do everything I can to make it out there. And I know you had mentioned you wanted me to bring Mrs. GU with, and hopefully we'll have some content out there too that you guys can meet, and she'll take a look at all the craziness that's going on around Cut Golf, because you guys are growing pretty big.
Yeah, no, I want to go shopping for my my invitational script, if you will.
Yeah.
With Mrs. GU, I think that'd be hysterical.
Yeah, she'll pick something out nice, definitely. All right, Sam. Well, I appreciate it as always. I won't take up too much of your time. Thanks again for your time today, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, sounds good, Adam. Thanks for having me on.